all kinds of problems. There's been problems with the water, contamination of the water. People are afraid that their water table is being sucked dry. The sand mines use a large amount of water. A lot of the extraction is done, some of the extraction is done and then the washing is done with water. There are chemicals that are used in the washing to separate their good sand from their bad sand, from the overburden, the sand they don't want. These chemicals are called flocculants. Some of them are cancer-causing chemicals. Some of this activity is happening very, very close to the water table and very close to the Mississippi River. For example, in Maiden Rock, there is an underground mine that they expect will eventually be 900 acres underground, including under the village of Maiden Rock, 350 feet underground, and they're mining within 50 feet of the water table, and they're discharging very, very close to the Mississippi River. So that's my world. There are some mines that have been in existence for 30 years in the area, so sand mines are not totally unheard of. But in those cases, the mine is usually surrounded by a very large berm, which is just really big hill that protects it, and there's a railroad spur that goes into it, and that railroad spur goes in, takes the sand, and then removes it. But what's happening now with this proliferation of mines in all of the countryside is that the roads are being torn up. And the roads, sometimes the local people are able to negotiate some money for the roads, sometimes they aren't. There was recently a mining association that was put together by 4 of these mines, and the rumors of the Capitol are that the reason they put together the association, among other things, is that they want a state law that says that the local community cannot charge the mines for the damage to the road. So that's my world. I am right now drafting 5 or 6 bills that have to do with sand mines. I want you to be aware of them just because you're concerned and knowledgeable citizens. They mostly have to do with right to know. So they have to do with whether or not the local people have been notified, whether or not there was a public hearing, whether or not there's a contract around on the land surrounding the land that you're about to buy. So I had a man that came into my area. He bought 80 acres. It was beautiful hunting land and recreational land. He put up a $190,000 house, and as he was putting the finishing touches on his dream house, found out that 3 of his 4 neighbors had contracts on a sand mine. So disclosure on real estate is one of the laws that I'm drafting. So it's good that you know this, because Wisconsin is being taken out of our state 1 railroad car at a time in western Wisconsin. 1 railroad car at a time. And there's no kind of severance tax, there's no kind of gross tonnage, none of those things that do apply to the our part of the iron ore law. So that's your reason to come next week or next time you meet.
Yeah. I was going to say, and then what it's used for after they get
it. We didn't even get that far. Yeah, then what it's used for. That's a really good point. Is, if you has anybody here seen the movie Gasland? Okay, some of you have. For those of you that haven't, I highly recommend that you take a look at it. If you can get it on Netflix, it's kind of a homemade movie. It's about a guy in Pennsylvania who had, on the mail, a guy was going to offer him, $100,000 to come on his land. And he said, wow, this is amazing. It's just a miracle. And then he started asking his neighbors about it. And basically the oil company or the natural gas company was going to come and drill on his land. And then he just asked the normal questions that anybody would ask and took his video camera with him. And slowly the world of the gas fracking business came to light. And it's his sort of journey into knowledge. And it's really powerful. It's very homemade, and you can tell it's homemade, but it's very powerful.
As well, the new Gus Van Sant movie.
What is it?
Ski and
Oh, yeah.
Promised Land.
Has anybody seen that? Good. Okay. What do you think of it?
It is good. I served on the Wind Siting Council. The wind turbine siting is the same kind of a deal. The coming in and leasing land not telling the neighbors, co-opting the local officials. So, as a matter of fact, they first started making promised land about wind turbines.
Really?
And then when fracking came in dramatically, they changed the topic.
Wow.
But it's the same playbook.
Wow. And that,
The movie's good, we thought.
what's your name?
Doug Schweitzer.
Doug. Well, Doug, that's what we've learned in western Wisconsin firsthand in a way that nobody in my neighborhood has ever had any background in dealing with before. And that's the techniques of the oil and gas industry,
Yep.
what they do, how they throw their money around, how they buy off communities, how they pit neighbors against neighbors, how they come up with huge engineering studies with poor, farmers and fishermen that don't have any technical background at all. They threaten lawsuits. They threaten to drag these poor townships that only have a budget of $100,000 to court. I mean, it's just very, very sad what's happening in western Wisconsin. And unfortunately, our newspapers in the eastern part of the state have covered it very little. They covered it a little bit in the State Journal, but not much in the Journal Sentinel at all. So I have a reporter that's actually one of my constituents who works for the Star Tribune, and he said, by golly, we're going to win a Pulitzer Prize in our coverage of it because we're really, really interested, and that's the newspaper out of Minneapolis. And his most recent article just happened last week, and his most recent article was about the conflict of interest among the local elected officials who have interest in the sand mines, basically who the oil and gas industry is trying to buy off and use those local elected officials to pit neighbor against neighbor.
It's the routine way of doing business.
And we know nothing about it. We had blinders on. We had no idea what we were up against, and they moved as fast as they could.
Yeah.
And that's why people call me and they say, there's a sand mine going in down the road, and I didn't know anything about it. There was no meeting, there was nothing. No public discussion about it at all. And now this mine is going to be there for 50 years, is in my neighborhood, and I can't sell. There's nothing I can do. People are talking about 30–40% decreases in property value. And think about it. Think about it. I mean, we are the country of property rights, and people are taking away your property rights because of what they did down the road, and you had no choice in it. I mean, it's just, everything is wrong about it.
With the wind siting, the state is complicit in this.
Yeah.
Isn't it true that it's a certain kind of sand?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Yes, I'm so glad you asked that question because this touches my love of the hills. The sand is 500 million years old. 500 million years old. Western Wisconsin has the perfect hardness, shape, and accessibility of this sand of any place in the United States. Any place in the United States. It is the best possible sand anywhere in the United States. And Wisconsin, the hills of western Wisconsin, are 500 million years old. And I say this, I'm so glad you asked the question, because I say this because this is what not only touches my heart, but it touches the heart of the people who came from Illinois, who came from southern Wisconsin, who came from Michigan, who came from Minnesota, and who grew up in the hills, and all came to western Wisconsin to live this rural life in what I think is one of the most beautiful spots in Wisconsin.
Shouldn't this valuable resource be enough to pay for our whole budget?
Oh my gosh. We can definitely solve our budget problems. There's no question about it. And what's really sad, what my constituents remind me of over and over again, they say to me, Kathleen, who has the best budget situation in the entire country? And it's North Dakota. Why? North Dakota charges all those people that are making money on that oil and natural gas industry. They charge for the depletion of their natural resources. They are putting that money away, knowing that they're going to have to pay way down the road for all the damage that's happening in western North Dakota. And they have one of the best budget situations in the country. as a proportion of their whole budget.
And Wisconsin doesn't.
Not a dime. My constituents tell me, Kathleen, I watched those railroad cars go down up the Mississippi River, and I watched Wisconsin leave one carload at a time. That's what they tell me. That's what my people tell me. I've just talked with the railroad industry, with someone who works with the railroad industry, and he told me that right now Burlington Northern, their best customers, that they are now shipping more sand than they are coal, than any other commodity. Sand is leaving Wisconsin on the railroads in western Wisconsin.
Interject. This is the time when you get to ask our speakers questions, and I'll encourage everyone to participate. We have another half an hour. I will pretty much end things at 7:45. That's kind of when we have to get out of here because we have to be out of the call altogether by 8 o'clock.